One of the most important things that you can learn when studying academic English is how to form an argument. Now you might be thinking, argument? You mean like a fight between people? Well, not exactly. In academia, what we mean when we say argument is a position or opinion that you take when writing an essay or giving a presentation, or even a discussion in class. It's usually something that you're trying to persuade or convince others of. However, there are several key things that differentiate forming an argument in academic English with a simple personal opinion. Hey guys, it's Zane here. In this video, I'm going to be talking about arguments in academic English and how you can form them to use in your academic essays, in your presentations, and even in your future careers. So firstly, I just want to start off by talking about the differences between arguments and personal opinions. An opinion is something that we use in everyday conversation and is often something that we maybe don't really think very clearly about. They're usually based on our personal points of view or even our emotions. You might say, I think this one is better than that one. I like pizza more than hamburgers. Or I like basketball more than baseball. Or simply saying that something is better. Arguments in academic English, however, have to be based on something, and that something is evidence and facts. And guys, this is where the science comes in. You need to use data and facts and statistics to support what you're saying in your arguments. Your arguments have to be based on something, otherwise you wouldn't even be making them in the first place. The more time you spend as a graduate student and in academia, you start to really be careful about the opinions that you give on things because you'll constantly feel that you have to provide some sort of evidence or statistics to prove that what you're saying is actually true. Otherwise, you won't be able to convince other people around you that you're correct about what you're saying. So even before you learn how to write an argument in an EAP style essay, you have to change your way of thinking a bit and consider why you're writing this essay in the first place. Generally speaking, if we knew everything there was to know from A to Z about this topic, then there wouldn't be anything to even write at all to begin with. So in academic essays in your introductions, you always have to indicate that there's something that we don't know. It could be a problem or some sort of issue that's come up for debate. Your argument might be a better way to address the problem, or a specific viewpoint or perspective on this topic that reveals something new. When writing academic essays, there are a few traps that students often fall into when trying to form an argument. As for some of the things that we want to avoid when framing our argument, the first is basing it on hearsay. Hearsay refers to something that you've heard other people say. For example, you heard from the auntie across the street, "Oh, I heard that restaurant down the street isn't good," or "XYZ food isn't good for you." It could actually be something much more advanced and convincing than that. For example, we might hear someone say that Mexico is the most popular tourist destination for Americans. But we need to look at some evidence to show that that statement is valid. Statements based on hearsay do not have any supporting facts or evidence to back them up, and are therefore not appropriate for academic arguments. Another common mistake that students make when forming arguments is saying that something is important or interesting. Now, I suppose if the topic that you're writing about wasn't important and interesting, you wouldn't even be writing about it in the first place, so that kind of goes without saying. So don't just simply say that something is interesting and important. We already know that it's important. Rather, in your argument and in your essay's introduction, you need to say why that thing is important and specifically outline its effects. If you clearly state what the effects of that thing is, we're going to know that it's very important. And lastly, when forming your arguments, you want to avoid arbitrary statements that have no connection with the evidence that you've provided. We would not, for example, say that Taiwan attracts many tourists because it has delicious fruit. While Taiwan does have great fruit, it's likely that their fruit isn't the only reason that it attracts tourists. There's no clear connection between Taiwan having good fruit and it attracting many tourists. We'd have to do further research to show the factors that go into Taiwan attracting tourists. So you might want to refine your argument in that case to say the factors that do directly contribute to Taiwan attracting more tourists. Or on the other hand, if a country struggles to attract tourists, you could identify several factors in your argument that explain why that is happening. So now to give you guys some example arguments that you could use in your academic essays, I would first recommend avoiding using the personal pronoun I, and instead phrase your argument from the perspective of this essay or this study. This will make your essay sound more objective and focused and less like a personal opinion and in your first person voice. So let's say we want to form an argument about migration and the economy and focus on a specific country that has many migrants. Let's say, for example, Singapore. We could say that this essay argues that Singapore's sustained economic growth in recent decades has been primarily attributed to its streamlined migration infrastructure and inflows of migrants into its workforce. You could then support this argument with economic and demographic data from the Singapore government and other academic articles on the topic, most likely in economics, migration studies, and demography. So for another example, let's say we're studying marketing and we wanted to form an argument about celebrities and advertisements and brand prestige. We could form an argument saying something like this. Despite the growth and popularity of using micro-influencers to promote new consumer products, this paper argues that celebrity endorsements in Asian countries remain the most impactful method of boosting a brand's sense of prestige among consumers. For an essay like this, we could utilize academic articles and books on marketing and branding in Asia and in other countries. And if you wanted, you could even create your own survey and conduct qualitative analysis on the statements that consumers made about celebrities and influencers promoting a specific type of product. Overall, arguments are extremely important in academic work and critical thinking in general. The more experience you get in forming arguments in your academic essays, the better you'll get at finding supporting evidence before you ever make any claims. Again, when forming our arguments, we want to avoid basing them on hearsay, simply saying that something is interesting or important, or form arbitrary arguments that are not based on evidence or logical cause and effect. And again, when writing your essays, it's best to phrase your arguments by saying this paper argues or this essay argues, as opposed to using the personal pronoun I. You always want to clearly state and summarize your argument in one sentence in your introduction of your essays, but more on this in a future video. I hope you guys enjoyed this video today and got some value from it. Also, if you're interested to learn more topics like this, or you're planning to study abroad or do a graduate program in English, I have a specialized English for academic purposes, or EAP course, which I regularly offer for students like you. The course is 38 hours in total, and each group is only 4 to 6 students, which gives each student an ample opportunity to practice speaking in a group environment and experience what a graduate level class in English is like before actually going abroad. Each week we cover different thematic topics to expose you to a broad range of fields, in addition to the necessary skills that you'll need to function in grad school in English. It has something for everyone, and I'm confident that you'll have a great time as you learn new skills. I look forward to seeing you guys in the next video.